Is a comet soon to strike Earth? Cosmic explosion will trigger epic floods destroying Earth. This is according to Graham Hancock, the best-selling author. He believes that a cosmic explosion will soon impact Earth, triggering floods. Within 20 years, a comet big enough to end life as we know it will hit Earth. That is the view of author Graham Hancock, who says it will trigger epic floods, says 200 ancient myths tell of a human civilization brought to an end by fire. And he argues scientific evidence now indicates these are based on hard facts. And this is on the Daily Mail, having to do with what he has written and what he believes, from evidence, of course, around the world, from Alaska to Indonesia, from America all the way down to Australia. More than 200 ancient myths telling of a human civilization brought to an end by flood and fire. And as we can see here, we have hundreds of Earth impact craters that we have already found, varying from a couple of meters to a couple of miles, to hundreds of miles actually. Now, compelling scientific evidence, which began to emerge only in 2007, indicates that these stories, such as the tale of Noah and his ark, are in fact based on hard fact. This is here now is the Yucatan strike that we had, that they believed happened about 67 million years ago. That was the end of the dinosaur age. Now, a cataclysm rocked our planet about 12,800 years ago, according to Hancock, and it caused a mass extinction of large animals such as the mammoth. This is 12,800 years ago, the mammoth, and sloth bears, and all but wiped out our own human race. The entire episode in the human story was rubbed out, a chapter not of unsophisticated hunter-gatherers, but of advanced technology. All the signs that are remnants of this civilization struggled on, sustained by a few individuals who knew the secrets of the former age. To their primitive contemporaries, it appeared that they possessed magical and holy powers. They were what Hancock called the magicians of the gods. And these quote-unquote magicians left a message for us, not a metaphorical spiritual message, but a direct and urgent warning that what happened before can happen again, and what destroyed their world can destroy our world today. Those warnings have gone unheeded for millennia, and now we have the scientific evidence to decode them, but it is almost too late. Within the next 20 years, Earth faces a catastrophic impact event, a catastrophe 1,000 times worse than the detonation of every nuclear weapon on the planet, a collision with the remnants of a comet big enough to end all life as we know it. And to understand what that could mean, we need to look back at the tumultuous epoch between 10,800 BC and 9,600 BC, which geologists call the Younger Dryas, D-R-Y-A-S. This was a time of extraordinary shifts in the world's climate, but the most devastating change of all came when the ice caps suddenly collapsed, dumping all the water they contained into the oceans and unleashing a tsunami that swept across all the continents. And as we'll see, all the evidence suggests this was the result of a comet crashing into the Earth. Now, we've seen in the beginning here of this video, you'll see now coming up here. Okay, this area here, above Latin America, that thing there, that seems to be a comet impact because of the fact that you see that it's smashed into and created an arc here of volcanic islands there. Does not seem to have left landmass, but it dug into the Earth's crust. And we have another one, and that obviously was a huge thing. It could have been a comet, which most of them are made of ice. And on the bottom of that, also it's heading towards the same direction. You have another one just about the same size that has done the same exact thing. And you have here a little volcanic arc of islands. I think they're called the Sandwich Islands, I'm not sure, right there. And again, it's done the same thing. And it looks like also that it has cut the landmass that could have been joined together between the tip of South America and Antarctica. And it looks like it was melted and it curved it towards the direction of this impact. So this is a separate impact. It could have been perhaps the same direction of what we saw in there in the north. It could have been a group of comets actually slamming into the Earth. And you have another one exactly in the same direction as well, right there, right there. That again seems to be a comet impact because it did not leave rock. It just dug into the Earth's crust again, right there. And again, you have the right there, and it looks as if it even sort of took the land with it. And there again, you have an area of volcanic islands. And of course, Australia's right there down south has at least 50 crater impacts right there. So you see, even on Google Earth, you can see the huge areas of the impacts. You can imagine the destruction that has taken place. They say that one of the past impacts, for example, the Yucatan Peninsula impact, right there, that big circle, that was about 67 million years ago. That was the age of the dinosaurs that put the end to the dinosaurs. The pieces of rock that flung up from the Earth's crust have been found circulating around the sun and even up to Jupiter. They've been flung all the way up to Jupiter. Can you imagine? The flames of that impact have reached half the way to the moon. That's unbelievable, the destruction that has been caused. Now, going back to the article, we talked about the geologists calling that destruction the Younger Dryas. And it was the time of the extraordinary shifts in the world's climate. The devastating change of all came when the ice caps suddenly collapsed, dumping all that water and unleashing tsunamis that swept across the continents. And the evidence suggests that this was a result of a comet crashing into the Earth. Many Native American tribes describe the devastation in their tales, in their legends, passed down from generation to generation. The Brule people of the Lakota Nation in modern-day South Dakota have a vivid legend of a fiery blast that shook the entire world, toppling mountain ranges and setting forests and prairies ablaze. Even the rocks glowed hot red, and the giant animals and evil people burned up where they stood. Now, after the fiery destruction came the floods. The rivers overflowed their banks and surged across the landscape. Finally, the Creator, with capital C, the Creator stamped the earth, and with a great quake, the earth split open, sending torrents across the entire world until only a few mountain peaks stood above the flood. Amazing. And this is not an isolated myth. The Cowichan of British Columbia, the Pima of Arizona, the Inuit of Alaska, and the Luiseno of California have similar stories, but it's in the Ojibwa people of the Canadian grasslands whose legend seems the most credible, almost scientific today. Their storytellers remember a comet called Long-Tailed Heavenly Climbing Star, which swept low through the sky, scorching the earth and leaving behind a different world. After that, survival was hard work. The weather was colder than before, and the Ojibwa believed that this was just a foretaste of an apocalypse to come. They spoke of a stark prophecy, foretold by their medicine men. Quote, "The star with the long, wide tail is going to destroy the world someday when it comes low again. It was not until the 20th century that scientists even began to consider the possibility that ancient American myths might be based on actual real events. J. Harold Bretz, a noted geologist in the 20s, began to investigate the notion of a prehistoric flood when he discovered hundreds of erratics, that is, colossal boulders that didn't belong in the landscape. And they were scattered across the rocky scablands of Washington state. So where did they come from? Bretz examined the colossal feature, a 600 square mile depression filled with basalt silt 400 feet deep. He saw only one explanation, that it was scoured by a spectacular flood that had ended as abruptly as it began. Amateur geologist Randall Carson has taken up Brett's work, and he took me to Dry Falls in Grand County, Washington, to see the most spectacular evidence of the deluge, Graham Hancock said. The waterless falls on the Grand Coulee, a sheer-sided gash, hundreds of feet deep and almost 600 miles long, which looks as though the hand of God had seized a chisel and ripped it along the landscape. Well, this is exactly what we saw between Latin America, north and south, as if the hand of God chiseled the surface of the earth. Same thing. The waterless, the chisel was not made of metal, but of immense quantities of turbulent debris, laden water that flowed for just a few weeks, he said. In all directions, across the prairie, it has left millions of jagged basalt boulders, some no bigger than a football, others the size of a family car. Dry Falls itself is close to 3 miles higher than Niagara and around 6 times as wide. The waters, 12,800 years ago, that carved out this vast cliff, Randall says, were more like a slurry of thick mud. There's whole forests torn up by their roots, roiling around in it, and fleets of icebergs jostling in the surface. And this whole mess is plucking blocks out of the basalt bedrock, dragging them into the torrent, sweeping them downstream. It might have been the biggest flood, but it was far from the only one. Oceans of ice melt had been unleashed around the whole world. Like me, Randall believes the most probable explanation for this deluge, literally of biblical proportions, was a comet impact, just as the Ojibwa described, a giant comet traveling on an orbit that took it through the inner solar system, broke up into fragments, and some of these, including up to 4 objects more than a mile across, smashed into the Cordilleran and Laurentide ice caps covering North America about 10,800 BC. Well, we already saw from Google Earth, that's the beginning of the video, what exactly we saw between North and between South America, just under the Yucatan Peninsula, as if the hand of God chiseled the surface of the earth, and another one the same direction, again, just about the same size, between the tip of South America and Antarctica. And again, the other one in the area of Indonesia, above Australia, a smaller area. It's the same direction, again, chiseled by the hand of God. Okay, so this obviously, they seem to be comet impacts that brought a lot of water with them as well. So, it sent temperatures plunging across the earth and initiated a new ice age that lasted 1,800 years. 1,200 years. And this was not mere speculation and hypothesis. In September 2014, the Journal of Geology presented a mass of evidence confirming the copious presence of so-called nanodiamonds in samples from the Younger Dryas boundary layer. The boundary layer is the deposit laid down by the geological event, and it could be seen, for instance, in a stratum in rock. Nanodiamonds are microscopic gems that form under the rare conditions of great shock, pressure, and heat, and are recognized as signs of powerful impacts by comets and asteroids. The big question was not whether there had been a comet strike 12,800 years ago, but why there was no crater. The explanation is simple. While smaller, low-density particles of the comet would have exploded in the atmosphere, the larger fragments hit the 2-mile ice caps The craters they left simply melted away at the end of the last ice age, and that long winter was remembered in many legends and in the sacred texts. The Zoroastrian religion in the Near East, for example, speaks of a fierce, foul frost and a fatal winter, inflicting on the whole earth by an evil spirit who made the world as dark as midday, as though it were dark night. On the other side of the world, the ancient Quiche Maya people in Guatemala spoke of a flood with much hail, black rain and mist, and an indescribable cold. But the text also tells of leaders who arrived in the wake of the disaster, armed with exceptional knowledge. These are the people I call the magicians of the gods. They understood how to construct buildings on a grand scale, how to organize and govern, and how to engineer tools of remarkable sophistication. Some of the technology they described appears to rival modern electric wizardry. The Zoroastrian wise man Huma was said to possess a miraculous cup in which you could see anything that was happening anywhere in the world, and a jeweled glass chariot that could fly. In carvings uncovered at ancient sites as far-flung as Turkey and Mexico, these wise men are depicted in strangely similar costumes. They are bearded men holding a bag or a bucket with a carved handle, with the heads of birds or fish. The Babylonian priest Berosus, writing in the 3rd century BC, described a mythical figure who arrived in Mesopotamia. His name was Oannes, and he had the whole body of a fish, but underneath and attached to the head of the fish was another head, human. Joined to the tail of the fish were feet like those of a man, and it had a human voice. It sounds very much as if Oannes was a human being wearing the elaborate fish costume that might have been holy robes or merely a piece of showmanship. At the semi-subterranean temple of Tiwanaku in western Bolivia, South America, similar shamanic figures are depicted wearing garments from the waist down, patterned in fish scales. Experts disagree over the age of these carvings, but they do also show animals that appear to be toxodons, that's gigantic rhino-like animals that became extinct about 12,000 years ago. So the magician of the gods, it seems, roamed all over the world. In the Middle East, Oannes was accompanied by 7 sages who are repeatedly described as conjurers, sorcerers, warlocks, and magicians who were masters of chemistry and medicine and who understood carpentry, stone cutting, and metalworking. Magicians such as these also turned up in Egypt at the same time. At the temple of Horus in the Egyptian city of Edfu, inscriptions known as the Edfu text describe godlike beings who were refugees from a sacred island that was destroyed by flood and fire. Their home, the masons of the gods, the mansions of the gods, was utterly destroyed and their civilization wiped out, but a few survivors had, luckily, been at sea when this disaster struck. Or perhaps since they had flying craft, maybe they were in the air. I don't know. Going back to this article, they set sail in ships to wander the world with one purpose: to reinvent their homeland. As the Edfu text recorded, their goal was the resurrection of the former world of the gods. The 7 sages who arrived in Egypt understood how to lay foundations and plan the construction of buildings. They were so steeped in knowledge that the primitive people who revered them believed that they were wiser and more powerful than their own old gods. Arab tradition says that the secrets of this technology were buried in the pyramids at Giza millennia later. The 9th century historian Ibn Ad el-Hakim believed the pyramids were designed not as tombs, but as places of safekeeping for books of knowledge dating to before the Great Flood. These books contain profound sciences and the names of drugs and their uses and hurts, and the science of astrology, arithmetic, geometry, and medicine, arms which did not rust, and glass which might be bent but not broken. That evidence of civilization far older than the Babylonians and Egyptians, a civilization that was all but destroyed by a comet 12,800 years ago, has long been lost. But there are other historic sites just as breathtaking as the pyramids, but much less known. One is Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, which literally means Potbelly Hill in Turkey. It's the oldest work of monumental architecture in the world, and it is massive. It's here, according to the late archaeologist Professor Klaus Schmidt, that Neolithic man discovered farming. It's also the place where ancient humans first tackled megalithic stone carving, erecting pillars that weighed 20 tons. This is architecture on the scale of Stonehenge, but far more sophisticated. And while Stonehenge is generally reckoned to be 4,600 years old, Göbekli Tepe is at least 12,000 years old. Bizarrely, as far as archaeologists can tell, the astonishing strides in human development made at Göbekli Tepe came out of nowhere. It's as if all of its people quite suddenly invented both agriculture and monumental architecture all at the same time. And now it seems unthinkable that primitive hunter-gatherers could suddenly dream up all the technology and know-how required without any process of experimentation. Surely Göbekli Tepe is powerful evidence of knowledge imparted by a prior civilization. But the site is also significant for a far more ominous reason. Complex zodiacal signs are inscribed on one of its limestone pillars, incorporating astronomical data supposedly not discovered until thousands of years later. Even more puzzling is the position of the stars, not quite where they would have been in the sky 12,000 years ago, but exactly where they are today. What does that mean? It's as though these mysterious, impossibly learned builders constructed their temple as though it existed in the present day. The magicians of the gods had a message for our times, and it is not one we can afford to ignore. The explosive power of the Younger Dryas comet was in the order of 10 million megatons, 2 million times greater than the biggest nuclear bomb detonated and 1,000 times more powerful than all the atomic devices stockpiled on Earth today. But when the Earth emerged from the path of the comet's debris stream 12,800 years ago, that was not the end of the story. My intuition is that the Göbekli Tepe pillar is a coded message to the future, our present age, about a second impending comet strike. As long ago as 1990, well before the discovery of physical evidence that proved the Younger Dryas ice age was caused by comet fragments colliding with the Earth, two far-sighted British scientists were sounding the alarm. Astrophysicist Victor Klube and astronomer Bill Napier believed that a giant unseen comet is now careening towards us through space. It is concealed with a cloud of cosmic debris known to astronomers as the Taurid meteor stream. This poses a double danger. We could be hit by any one of the millions of space rocks in the stream, or by much larger pieces of the unseen comet itself, if and when it explodes. And it could explode at any moment. It is nothing less than an interplanetary hand grenade. Sealed within its thick shell is a seething mass of pitch-like tar, which will gradually build up pressure until, like an overheated boiler with no release valve, the comet will detonate and shatter into fragments a mile wide or more, tearing through the solar system at tens of thousands of miles an hour. We cannot guess exactly when that explosion will occur. It could happen as we re-enter the meteor stream, or shortly before, strewing our planet's path with hurtling boulders. All we know for certain is that in around 15 years, the Earth will once again cross the Taurid meteor stream, that vast highway of cosmic debris, right at the place where the biggest and most numerous fragments that currently exist are collected. Some of them are 3 times the size of the asteroid that hit the planet 65 million years ago, the one that did away with the dinosaurs, setting off a global firestorm, bringing about the extinction of the dinosaurs. This is when the risk of a collision is most severe, and this is when the prophecy of the Ojibwa people is set to come true. Quote, "The star with the long and wide tail is going to destroy the world someday when it comes low again." End quote. We can't say that we were not warned. The magicians of the gods were trying to get a message to us here, now, in this 21st century, and we need to listen to this. Now, the thing is, how did they know over 12,000 years ago what our constellation would look like today? And it's for our present age that they left this message for us. The people that constructed the pillars in stone in Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which were hidden until just a few years ago. And they were uncovered, they were dug up, and that's the message that has been found on them. I'll leave a link below for you for this. This is by Graham Hancock on Daily Mail. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.